Okay, this is our daily study of Pirkei Avot, the Mishnah Ethics of the Fathers, in honor of those who have yahrzeit for tonight, the 25th of Av, Reuben Burke, Mary Clayman, Pauline Levine, Rose Malinowski, Svi Miller, Sam Shapiro, and Harry Zelmanovich. May their memory be for a blessing. A link to the text of the Mishnah will be in the first comment below. Last time I inadvertently did two Mishnahs because in my version it's one, but in the Safaria version that I'm linking to it's two. All right. So last time in Safaria layout we did 4 and 5, and today we'll do half of one in the Safaria. In mine this is two different ones as we'll see, but so we're going to call this chapter 6 Mishnah 6a. Okay, and then we'll do 6b on Sunday. Hopefully you're not too confused. But as you'll see, this is an incredibly long Mishnah. That's why it's divided into two in some versions. So, Gedola Torah Yoser Mina Kahuna Mina Malchus. Shamalchus Niknes Beshlosha Milos, Vakahuna Beestrim Va'arba, Vatorah Niknes Ba'arba Ushmona Devarim. Okay, greater is the Torah than the priesthood and the kingship, for the kingship is acquired by 30 qualities, and the priesthood by 24, but the Torah is acquired by 48 things. Okay, this is a little bit imprecise because, okay, this is a theme throughout Pirkei Avot that the crown of Torah, the Pirkei Avot is really preaching a meritocracy, that anyone can become either a Torah scholar or someone who lives a life of Torah, and that's better than the inherited titles of priest. Father has to be a Kohen for you to be a Kohen, or the monarchy, right? You have to be descended from King David to be eligible for the Jewish monarchy. Your father has to have been the king. So but we see in scripture that the kingship is acquired by 30 qualities. Well, what does that mean? So the commentaries quote that it says in the book of Samuel that the king had these 30 prerogatives. That's why these aren't quite analogous. We're going to see that what the king had was 30 prerogatives. It's numerology. It's 30 things that are associated with him. That's the loose connection. But the prerogatives are the prophet Samuel was actually rebuking the people because they asked for a king. The implication of the book of Samuel is that Jews aren't supposed to have a monarchy. Maybe that's a support for democracy, for a less authoritarian type of leadership. But we wanted to be typical of Jewish history. We wanted to be like all the nations that surround us. Give us a king to rule over us. Um, and King Samuel, who was a prophet, wanted the old time sort of informal model of leadership where a charismatic prophet, a person of God, just arises naturally through the consensus of the people as the leader of the people. So fascinating theologically. And he rebukes them. He says, "Oh, you want a king? These are the things the king is going to do to you." And he lists 30 things. He'll rule over you. He'll take your sons. He'll draft your sons to war. He'll take your land. He'll tax you to death, and so on and so forth. And the people want it anyway. All right, but there's 30 things that he lists there. And the priesthood has 24 things associated with it. This is different. This is 24 gifts to which the priest is entitled. But remember, we're just making these loose numerological connections. So the priest gets 24 gifts in the times of a temple. He gets to eat all sorts of animal offerings. He gets tribute from everybody's crop, so on and so forth. He gets all sorts of agricultural and cattle rights that he's entitled to. Okay, but the Torah is acquired with 48 things, which means you have to have 48 specific qualities to be worthy of becoming a Torah scholar. And then the Mishnah lists all of them. So this is going to take us a while to get through. I won't give much commentary, but this half of the Mishnah is just going to list the first 24. So we'll just do those. And then on Sunday, the next 24. They're divided into two groups of 24, which are slightly different, as we'll see on Sunday. The first 24 are just general things that you need, and the next 24 are, this is what the Kati says, things you need to retain your Torah scholarship. All right, so let's go through the first 24. B'Talmud, b'Shmias ha'ozen, b'Arichas v'Sayim, b'Vinas halev, b'Sichlos halev, b'Ema, b'Yira, b'Anava, b'Simcha, b'Shimush chacham, b'Diktu chaverim, b'Filpul ha'Talmidim, b'Yishuv, b'Mikra, b'Mishnah, b'Miut shena, b'Miut sicha, b'Miut tainug, b'Miut tzchok, b'Miut derech eretz, b'Erech ha'payim, b'Lev tov, b'Amunas chachamim, b'Kabbalas ha'Yisurim. So let's read them. By study, well, that's the most obvious one. It's kind of funny, but it has to be listed. You want to learn Torah, first you have to study it. Not going to happen on its own. By the hearing of the ear, you have to listen, you have to pay attention. By the ordering of the lips, not only do you listen, but you should recite it. This is very Jewish, that you should recite it out loud. That's what we do right now with Pirkei Avot. It's traditionally recited verbally. Then you internalize it. By consideration of the heart, really beautifully put. And some of these will be my own take on it. You have to internalize it in your heart, not just in your mind. By the perception of the heart. To me, that means coming up with unique insights. You internalize it in your heart, and then you have insight from within your own heart. By awe, by reverence, by humility. Awe, A-W-E, means a certain level of fear. You have to have trepidation that this is a serious undertaking, that I'm connecting to these texts that are sacred, and therefore approach them with that sense of fear. By reverence, which means respect, it's another side of fear, but it's supreme respect. And by humility, those two things in turn will lead to you being humble about your scholarship. But then it follows up with by joy. See, there's a lot of balance there. You have to have fear and humility and reverence, but you should also approach it with some degree of joy that you enjoy learning. By attendance on the sages. So you're not just relying on your own learning, you have teachers and you trust the authority of the sages. By careful research with fellow students, by the argumentation of the disciples. Three relationships here. You attend teachers, you bounce it off an equal, that's your colleague, and then you teach someone else, and that's your student, and you learn from them too. The beautiful three levels of relationship. By the argumentation of the disciples. Okay, by being settled, you have to be calm in order to study Torah. By Bible and Mishnah. So that's the written Torah and the oral Torah. You have to know both. By moderation in sleep, moderation in conversation, moderation in pleasure, moderation in jesting, and moderation in worldly affairs. So, you can't be someone who just sleeps all the time. You have to be able to burn the midnight oil. Moderation in conversation. You take a coffee break or by the water cooler in work. This would be the modern day analogy, and you're someone who's just always schmoozing with others. Well, don't be so idle. Get back to work in terms of Torah study. And moderation, it says. Jews are social people. Have some conversation, but not too much. Moderation in pleasure. You can't. You have to desist from. That's another thing about balance. As moderation, we do believe in pleasure, but not overindulgence. Moderation in jesting. Don't be a clown. Don't be joking around all the time. Be focused. Moderation in worldly affairs. That's things like business or following sports. I don't know that moderate that. These are things that are good qualities to have in general, but here they're as applied to becoming a Torah scholar. They'll also be good for your own success, in other words. By being long suffering, that means you absorb insult. If people insult you, and you're very patient. By a good heart. Okay, once again, that's an objectively good quality to have, but you'll also be able to become a better Torah scholar when you have a positive outlook in the world and you have a good heart and you're patient. By faith in the sages and by submission to sorrows. So before we had attendance of the sages, you study from sages, but you also have to have faith in them. There's a little bit different. That you have the humility to understand that the rabbinic authorities who came before you might have been wiser than you. You look at the commentary of Rambam and Rashi. It doesn't mean we're uncritical. You could always argue in Judaism. We do argue. But you have a degree of faith that Maimonides and Rashi and all these old time names, had a certain degree of wisdom that you have to have faith in. And finally, by submission to sorrow, that means accepting. This is theologically fraught, and we could discuss this a lot. You accept things that happen to you, and you just still go on with, just like Abraham did. God put him under 10 trials of faith, and you have hardships that happen to you, and you sort of accept it. And I don't think accept it has to mean accept that everything is for the best. I try not to counsel people that way. You don't want to invalidate people's pain. Whatever's happening to you, it's all for the best. I mean, that's easy to say, right? But I think accepting it means accepting that you're still going to move on and persevere, and you're not going to let it defeat you. So that's how I understand accepting hardship. So those are the first 24. Okay, then stay tuned on Sunday. We'll do the second half of the Mishnah. The next 24 qualities you need to become a Torah scholar. Okay. Prayer following the study of Mishnah. Ana Adonai malei rachamim asher b'yadcha nefesh kol chai v'ruach kol b'sar ish yena l'ratzon l'chanecha toraseinu tfiloseinu ba'avor nishmos kol ha'azkaros shel halayla. U'gemolna imehem b'chastak hagadol liftoach lehem shari rachamim v'chesed b'shari gan Eden. U'skabel osam ba'avo v'chibo shlach lehem malachecha hakadoshim b'tahorim l'lichem l'shivim tachas eitz hachayim. Eitzel nishmos hatzadikim hatzidkanios chasidim v'chasidos lehenos miziv shchinoscha. L'asbiya mituvcha atzafim l'tzadikim. Vaguf yanuach bekever b'menucha nechona b'chedva v'simcha v'shalom. V'ksiv yavo shalom yanuchal mishkavosam. Holech nechalcho. V'ksiv yalzu chasidim b'chavod yiranro mishkavosam. V'ksivim tishkav lo sivchad v'shachavta v'arva shnasech. And in English, please, O Hashem, full of mercy, for in your hand is the soul of all the living and the spirit of every human being. May you find favor in our Torah study and prayer for the souls of Reuben Burke, Mary Clayman, Pauline Levine, Rose Malinowski, Zvi Miller, Sam Shapiro, and Harry Zelmanovich, in whose memory we study and pray. Accept them with love and affection, and send them your holy and pure angels to lead to settle under the tree of life near the souls of the righteous and devout, to enjoy the radiance of your presence, to satiate them from your good that is concealed for the righteous. May the body repose in the grave with proper contentment, pleasure, gladness, and peace. As it is written, let him enter in peace, let them rest on their beds, everyone who has lived in his proper way. As it is written, let the devout exult in glory, let them sing joyously upon their beds. And as it is written, if you lay down, you will not fear. When you lay down, your sleep will be sweet. Amen.